in the midst of a huge transformation where our peers, communities, and workplaces are all really melding into one. Welcome to Reimagining Company Culture. My name is Christina Giordano, and I am the Partnerships and Community Manager here at AllVoices, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. Today, I'm really excited to welcome our next guest onto the show, Ayanna Edwards. She is the head of people at HackerOne. Thank you for being here. If you want to share a little bit about yourself, for our audience, including your pronouns, and when you were younger, do you remember how you answered the question, what do you want to be when you grow up?
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much, Christina. Happy to be here. As you mentioned, my name is Ayanna Edwards. I am the head of people at HackerOne. My pronouns are she, her. And what did I want to be when I grow up? That evolved over time. When I was about 3, I wanted to be a mother of identical twins. Like that was it. That's all I wanted. It was really simple. Somewhere in that, I realized I probably should get a partner to create those identical twins. And then I was lucky enough to be raised around a lot of powerful women. And somewhere it pivoted to a completely different trajectory of I wanted to be this powerful woman in the boardroom. It was more of a visual for me. Like I wanted to be like that 2 cell phone holding, power dress having on, high heels, clacking on the floor, walking into that board meeting. And it was very specific. I wanted it with the stockings with the line up the back. I know nobody was, but it was very specific. I don't know where that came from. I don't know, but in my head. And it's funny because I didn't associate that to an actual job or career. It was just what I wanted to do when I grew up. Like that's what I knew.
I love that. I'm picturing, if you watch the Rugrats, Angelica Pickle's mom with the 2 cell phones, and I think she also wore a suit and just like the stockings. That's what I'm picturing. And you fast forward to now, I want to know kind of how your personal journey has really led you up until this point, to lead the people function and then be specifically at the company HackerOne.
Sure. It's an interesting journey. So following up, being the businesswoman, I actually got to do that. Logically, my logical mind said, okay, you're great at math. Why don't you go into finance? So I had a whole career in finance, went to school for finance, got my MBA, all kind of things, and great career in finance. But there was something that was still missing, and I wasn't quite sure what that was. In that, though, I had a very interesting trajectory. I had a lot of great people who saw greatness in me before I saw it. So often I was thrown into realities that I wasn't ready for, like, the CFO coming to me and saying, hey, I need you to present in front of these board of directors really quick because I have an emergency. And I'm like, what? I've never presented before. And another organization, the CHRO was like, hey, I know you're here for finance purposes, but I really love how you present and how you relate with people. Can you come over here and lead an HR team for us? And I was like, me? I was like, I might be a walking HR nightmare. Are you sure? Like, you want me over there? And fell in love with HR. So that's how I got to HR. And I realize now, looking back, it had a lot to do with a combination of my ability to get truths out of people because I see people for individuals, as well as being able to build those right relationships, which is what made me so successful on the finance side. So fun fact, in working at that company, was at Ultimate Software, we had acquired another organization, and then we kind of went through a merger, and I had since left the organization. But someone who worked on my team at that organization had mentioned me to his current head of HR where he was. And we were just chit-chatting. She's like, I heard of this great company. She's like, I'd love for you to come work for me. But I was like, yeah, but I'm not moving to Paris. So, because the company was in Paris. And she's like, I heard of this great company. Why don't you check them out? And that's actually how I got to HackerOne. So a lot of support, a lot of great people in my journey. And that was a very short way of explaining my journey, but a lot of great people seeing greatness in me before I did in my journey, which has now got me here to HackerOne.
I love that. And now you see greatness in others as well, leading a people team, which is really great. And you get to hire new folks as well. I'm sure, and we were discussing this before we hopped on kind of the recording too, but there's so much going on. And a lot of times, especially over the past 2 years, people are coming to people leaders and HR leaders to solve anything and everything. What's the next problem or situation you're currently trying to solve? What's taking up the most brain space in Ayanna's mind?
Compensation, which I'm sure is no shock to any people leader right now.
Yeah.
Compensation, it's been top of mind. It's been so top of mind. We literally, as a people team said, we're going to stop everything and really invest in what our compensation is going to look like at HackerOne. I'm really enjoying the project. At first, it was a little painful, but I'm starting to enjoy it because it's really taking it back to the grassroots of what are we rewarding? How are we going to continue to show our people how much we value them? And how do we continue to remind them about our mission and what we are here for? So definitely is on top of mind all the time. And if I forget, there's always a gentle reminder for someone to remind me at work about it. So yeah.
I'm sure compensation is on so many people's minds right now, especially in a remote first world or a hybrid version, and just thinking about kind of where they're working and their purpose as well. The other kind of trend that we're seeing as well is that people and HR teams are really thinking about the need for innovation, not doing things business as usual. There's a huge opportunity to be creative when you're faced with a lot of challenges. What are some of the ways kind of that you have either innovated in a process or initiative at HackerOne over the past 2 years?
In this initiative, it's really, I don't know if it's innovative as much as more reminding people, is to kind of lead with empathy. Mm-hmm. This project, yes, okay, there's a numbers behind it, right? You have to make X amount of money in order to get X amount of compensation, and we need to reward you. But there's a level of empathy of remembering and reminding people we're dealing with people's lifestyles, people's realities, people's truths, what they're able to do. It's not as simple as I want to live in a big house. For some people, it's as simple as I want to send my child to a great school, or I want to be able to, better and further my own realities, whether that's traveling and so forth, which brings this world a little closer together, that helps mitigate some of these other issues that are happening, and for us to forget or remind each other how to respect each other. So it's really bringing back the people into compensation, if you will, and the people back into work. So it's not a concrete innovative practice, but it's a practice that I think that we all need to kind of get back to.
Yeah, I think leading with empathy and vulnerability and thinking about the big picture is really important in a lot of roles as well, especially in leadership, and part of kind of the people team as well. And everybody's responsibility at a company, I believe too, is making sure that your teammates and whoever you're working with, whether they've worked at the company for 5 years or new kind of team members, feel like they are included and that they belong and that they're valued. In your experience, what is really important to ensure all employees at HackerOne feel like they are part of the culture, no matter when they joined or their level at the company either?
Sure. It's so important. For me, what I try to do at least is giving them the space to be authentic. Bring your full self to work. That often, you have to be careful what you ask for, right? Because sometimes that includes, allowing people the safe space to share their opinions and thoughts. And sometimes those opinions and thoughts can be difficult to receive, or they're hurtful to other people, or they're not fully thought out. And so how do we create a place where people could still be themselves while respecting other people's differences and still being inclusive to the organization and everyone that's part of that organization? So I guess in other words, it's to encourage the diversity and still be inclusive with those diverse thoughts. And so that's how I try to do it.
I think that makes sense because with people are complicated, and they also are bringing in all of their own experience as well. So creating a really meaningful and authentic, to use your kind of word as well, dialogue around that is really important as well. And over this kind of past 2 years too, a lot of people have felt really disengaged for whatever reason, whether it's outside of work or related to their job. How do you think about really re-engaging folks in the work and your team of employees?
I'm really big about communication, like good old fashioned, hey, let's chit chat, let's talk, what's going on with you, and then doing that with empathy and reminding people two-sided. One, you're not in this alone. I think people forget that on the people team, we're people too. Like we feel the same pain, hurt, we're not allowed to show it to you because, then it kind of, not that we're not allowed to, but it kind of, we're supposed to save face so that you have this place to come to. But sometimes it's just having a conversation, like a good old, hey, what's going on? Let's chit chat. Like, let's stop all of this like noise. Let's stop all this. And you and I talk. And it's to really just bring it down to an individual level and to remember that people are people. They're not assets. They're not, all the tools that people like to call them within a business. You know, they're people, and they sleep and they cry and they hurt and they bleed and they have joy, and there's all these things. And let's talk about, let's, bringing it back to the compensation. I've had several conversations with people, and when I brought it to the forefront, let's talk about what's really happening, and so sometimes it's, listen, where I'm living now, the cost is astronomical and I don't know how I'm going to fix this. And I'm like, well, let's talk about it. Let's talk to your landlord. I was like, can I help talk to you? Like, can I help, or at least coach you how you can talk to them and bring things to the forefront? And so I like to believe it helps people remember that they're not in this alone. And so they feel re-engaged because I've given them some of me, and therefore they come back and give some of them back to the organization.
I think that comes down to trust as well and modeling that behavior. The idea that you're not alone, you're not on an island is an important one just to remember. And whether you are just asking like, hey, do you want to check in? Or you're asking in kind of a more formal process, we're talking about employee trust, listening and getting that feedback. Can you share any other examples of how you've used that employee feedback, whether it's one-on-one or in any other ways that influence, your strategy at HackerOne?
Sure. Sometimes I feel like it's almost a bit of a democracy when we make decisions at the HackerOne, and I have to kind of reel that in a little. It's like, I hear you guys, but again, back to this compensation thing, clearly, as you're seeing, it's on the top of mind. But the reason why we even stopped and said we're going to do this is because we were hearing so much pain around it. And no matter what other smaller initiative that we said we were going to accomplish for this year, it came right back down to compensation. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that we have stopped as a people team and said we are literally stopping everything else that we're doing right now and focusing full-fledged on this. We've brought in we've hired people to help lead this initiative. We've spoken to people. We've stayed open throughout the process. We're showing them that when you yelled out loud, we need to understand our compensation as to why and how this is happening. We are saying we heard you, and these are the things that we're doing to move forward, including showing you how you can influence that, how you can impact that. Compensation is a reality of a reward system. You don't get a merit just because you've been here for 3 years. Like, great, I appreciate you being here, but there's a reward system here. And so it's also not just, hey, this is how we're going to compensate you, but this is also how you can control that compensation, how you can influence it. And you weren't sure about that, you needed some tools, great, let us help you develop some tools in order to do that. So it's literally this is the outcome of our people, of our hackeronis, if you will, speaking up enough times and loudly enough to say, this is the true issue. And we're like, all right, let's deal with it. Let's deal with it.
I think that's important as well to highlight this is something that employees feel comfortable sharing with you. And also, like you're saying, okay, we hear you. This is what we're doing about it. We don't have it solved yet, but these are the steps that we're taking. And just having that two-way communication is really important. So employees feel like they are heard, they are seen, which is what a lot of companies want to do today. This doesn't have to be at HackerOne, but what are some kind of common mistakes you have seen, even with the best intentions, either companies or leaders make in their people strategy, or even more so, their compensation strategy or anything like that?
I think they just forget that they're dealing with people. Like you're dealing with people, right? Like you're dealing with people with real lives, with real realities. And as much as they might love working with us, I promise you, we're not the driver of their world. Like, I promise. So let's figure that. And let's invest in our people. Let's make sure we're motivating them properly. Let's make sure we're listening to them. Let's make sure that they know that they are important to us and we understand their value. The other side of it is that I feel that it's investing in your people team. They're typically the ones who would drive those type of conversations and making sure, and the culture to make sure that people feel valued. And I think companies either don't invest enough in their people team and or don't include the people team at the beginning of decision making. But then they come back and say, hey, well, we didn't include you and we know we didn't, but can you fix the problem anyway? Or can you fix it? The avoidable mistake had we included you in the beginning. I'm like, yeah, no, we can't, because you made the mistake and you're too far. You went down this rabbit hole I don't even know how to come out of. No. So I think those are the two biggest mistakes. It's like just forgetting that we're dealing with people, and then forgetting to give to people who are here to deal with the people. Like, as the people team or head of HR, our sole role is to deal with the people. Give us the tools to do that.
Absolutely. I think being proactive is really important, and also working with other kind of strategic partners at the business to ensure that they're also putting people at the forefront as well in their decision-making process and thinking about things from a holistic perspective as well. There are a lot of kind of sayings around, how to be successful in work and what needs to happen, bring your full self to work, which you brought up as well. I want to know from your perspective if you believe, do you think people need to love what they do?
No, I think they have to have a passion for what they do. And that's my true authentic answer. I tell this to people all the time. I was like, it's called work. It's not called fun. I want you to have fun at work, but at the end of the day, it's called work, right? But when you have a passion for something, right, you're going to push through those difficult moments. You're going to push through those hard times. Love can be a bit disarming, and it doesn't allow you to see the full picture of what's in front of you because you have like these rose-colored glasses, and then what should probably impact you when it becomes difficult, and it should impact you slightly, impacts you so much more because you're disappointed because you've now put this situation on this pedestal. But when you have a passion for something, you understand that all of that is part of what you're trying to get to. So yeah, I'd like for that to happen, but I think reality, it's more passion than love.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with that as well. I think it's idealistic to think about that, but also it's a nuanced answer, and it's a really kind of binary way of looking at it. But I wanted to know kind of what you've seen throughout your career as well. But plus one, um, how would you complete this sentence? In order for people leaders to be successful, they need to have blank in their strategy for the future.
They need to have empathy. You're dealing with people at the end of the day, and they need to remember that. So.
Yeah, I think that is a common theme too, in terms of people forget, to have empathy when they're making these decisions. You never want to put a decision up on a pedestal or think of things in a silo. So being proactive and having that conversation, and also asking yourself that internal question, are you being empathetic in this moment, is important. Is there a leader who comes to mind who you admire because they were super empathetic, or because they just modeled really good characteristics of kind of a people manager?
I always have difficulty answering this question when I'm asked. I mean, literally, my answer could probably change per moment. I'll tell you this: when I was growing up, it used to be Oprah. Oprah was like, I wanted to grow up and be Oprah. I was totally going to be
Incredible.
Oprah. Loved her. And then I had the benefit of watching our CHRO at Ultimate Software, Viv Maza, and how powerful she was, and how authentic she was, and how caring and loving that she was. If you did not know her, she was a powerhouse, and she came off, people were scared of her, but it was because she was a powerhouse, but it's because she was so passionate about her love for the people at the organization. And then today, if I had to speak about someone, my current leader, Dean, he's someone who is very authentic in what he says and how he speaks. He's very caring, but because the nature of his role forces him to be a lot of times within the parameters of the law. He's our general counsel. It's interesting how well he's able to share that while kind of putting down the hammer. And so when I think about what's so unique about all of them, for me, is that they're always authentically themselves, and they're not afraid to be candid about what they're saying while still doing it from a place of caring. So I guess there's not one particular leader, but there's one particular commonality that they all have.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely know when you are working with or for a really great leader. And I think it's just always an interesting kind of question to ask as well, in terms of when you're thinking and reflecting on your leadership experience too, kind of the characteristics that you want to emulate and model as well. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you would like to share with our audience, or maybe 1 to 2 key takeaways you hope listeners bring with them after listening to our kind of conversation today?
Sure. Not that you didn't ask, I just want to kind of drive home, because it's been, I've weaved it in, but it's always to remember to lead with empathy, to give people the same understanding that you hope for. A lot of times we hold people at these high standards, and then we make a mistake, and then we're like, oh, but they should understand what we meant, what our intentions were. And so if we give each other that same understanding, I think the world will be a bit of a better place. The other thing is to have the integrity to own your part in the moment. So whether that's good, bad, or ugly, own your parts. And if you were confident enough to make that reality, so whether it was something good or a mistake, be confident enough to take it to that next level. So those are the 2 things.
I love that. I think those are good calls to action to kind of close out our conversation. Ayanna, thank you so much for being on Reimagining Company Culture.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely. And as a reminder for folks who are listening, at All Voices, we believe in that psychologically safe workplace, and really believe that employee feedback management is important for the company to succeed on a whole. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everyone.